Hello and welcome back to the Geek podcast. We are your hosts, Joel and Sebastian, and today we welcome the Arkansas eTraveler Landon to the podcast. Landon will discuss his EV ventures across the Southeast, as well as some insight into Wal-Mart's own DC Fast Charging rollout. So without further ado, let's welcome Landon, the Arkansas eTraveler, to the podcast. All right, we are joined today by Landon, also known as the Arkansas eTraveler. So a little background: I stumbled upon Landon's page. I believe one of the Facebook groups, maybe one of the local Facebook groups. I think someone shared some of your work in one of our local Facebook groups. So I kind of was checking it, and you kind of have a cool story of kind of like exploring, the Southeast, especially kind of areas of Oklahoma and Arkansas, with EVs and kind of checking out some EV DC fast charging infrastructure. So before we go dive into that, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got into electric vehicles?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is truly a privilege to join other fellow media and EV enthusiasts. Some of the best conversations I have are with people who share these interests as well. Not everybody shares the same passion for EVs or media, so this is great. So I live up in Northwest Arkansas. I've lived here for about the past 4 years, and I'm originally from East Arkansas. And when me and my wife moved up here, my life became a little compartmentalized in that I had to live in Bentonville, but I work in Springdale. And so I picked up quite the commute in doing that, and I've maintained that for the 4 years that I've taught in Springdale. And so last summer, just, going to sleep, you get some thoughts in the back of your head. And mine was my GMC Sierra Denali, and that I was just racking up the miles. And the gas was about $300 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really starting to worry me with some goals that me and my wife have that are going to require some financial prudence. So I just began to kind of debate the idea of an electric vehicle. I had already kind of accepted based on the growth that, even I as a non-EV enthusiast had seen Tesla go through, the growth there, the growth from Hyundai and the EG&P group. Now that I know who they are,
Yep.
It was just becoming aware to me that was probably going to be what my next vehicle was going to be. So last summer, got a great deal at my local Chevrolet dealer, and pulled the trigger on it, and have taken a $300 gas bill down to virtually zero. And we'll get into that discussion, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, it's just the savings, the economics of owning an EV are just spectacular for my life situation right now. And I still miss my truck so much. It was near and dear to me. Like that was a big purchase for me and my wife. But for what my Blazer EV has done for us, I'm really glad we made that switch.
So interested to hear how hard of a transition was that for you? Because I went from a Ram 1500 to a Tesla Model 3 and then a Tesla Model Y. How hard was it to transition for you from going in something that big that sits so high up to something a lot smaller like the Blazer?
Right. I grew up in SUVs and trucks. My family, we're huge. We're all over 6 foot, except for my maternal grandmother. And I actually drive a school bus too. It's easier for me to drive a school bus than a sedan.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way it is. For whatever reason, the Blazer EV, I guess it has to do with weight and some things like it. It just felt like a big truck driving it.
Mm-hmm.
You had the same effect of pitch, roll, and yaw, as you were driving it. It braked very similarly once I figured out how Chevrolet's EV regen on demand and their regen braking worked. Once I got over that learning curve, which was slight, I mean, it's second nature again. And then of course you add in some new tools, instant torque. is a huge tool for EV drivers. I think in their tool belt of driving. Not everybody has that. That's useful for avoiding. So it was not the biggest. It was not as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be, just because it felt like the weight compensation really made them feel similar to me.
Awesome.
See, I also came from a truck and then went to a EV. I went from a smaller truck. I went from a Nissan Frontier.
Okay.
But then I also went to a much smaller EV. I have a Chevy Bolt.
Oh, okay.
And while the Frontier was a smaller truck, it had the turning radius of a school bus. So I kid you not, you could not make a U-turn unless you were on like a 3-lane road, and you would have to turn into the very outside lane in that thing because there was just no way.
So it's not like it's not like the Hummer where it feels like you're fishtailing because of the rear turning, right?
No, it's like if you were trying to do the Hummer and you didn't have rear wheel steering.
Gotcha. You have the rear wheel steering, so yeah.
You're about ready to displace your shoulder cranking on the wheel like a school bus. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can relate to a lot of what you just talked about. I was doing, my commute previously was 60 miles round trip. And so I was doing that in a truck that got 18 miles to the gallon on the highway, and then switched to a EV that, gets 3.5 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour.
And you get to charge for free at work too.
And now I get to charge for free at work and just stuff like that. So yeah, I feel you, relate to that a lot. So some of the content you tend to focus on deals with the DC fast charge rollout in the kind of interior of the US. So what are some of your just kind of quick observations about that rollout?
In Arkansas specifically, I have ventured since owning an EV all the way over to Georgia. But I've stuck mainly to the analysis, once I actually understood what was going on, mainly Arkansas, Southwest Missouri, Oklahoma, even Texas now. And there is a strict, to me, it seems like there's a strict adherence to the alternative fuel corridors, interstates, and major U.S. highways. That seems to be where I encounter them the most. And to me, that makes perfect sense. But at the same time, it doesn't either, because I get that, there's not a ton of sprawling metropolises in this area, but, Northwest Arkansas is over 500,000 people now. And still the city of Fayetteville does not have one DC fast charger in it. Which
baffles me every time I'm up there.
blows my mind. Now, Springdale's picking up some of the weight there, and but you shouldn't have to go all the way to Springdale to get a DC fast charger in an SEC college town. Yep. So there's some paradoxes still going on in this area, and so I think that there's a strict adherence to these interstates. Makes perfect sense. Arkansas is very transportation, very intermodal heavy, especially where I'm from in East Arkansas. I come from an area where the Mississippi River's right there, I-55, I-40, Burlington Northern, UP, it's all about transportation. So I understand that. But those paradoxes are quite puzzling. I will say there's also a growing number of players in our area. We've recently welcomed EV Go with Pilot Flying J in Springdale. We also invited 69 cents per kilowatt hour, but that's not their fault.
We have one of those two down here. We feel you.
Mercedes-Benz has made it up to Greene County in Missouri with Buc-ee's in Springfield, and sure enough, I suspect they'll be at Buc-ee's in Benton and Buc-ee's in West Memphis when those facilities are built. So they'll have a growing footprint in Arkansas. And even Shell Recharge did a review there down in Saline County. And I
watched that video.
That's about how I felt, was like, it's an investment, Landon. It's an investment, Landon.
Yep. Yep.
So
I'm originally from Saline County, so I know where that one is, have used it before, and
he prefers the EV Go Flying J one, don't you?
And that's saying something, because that one, like you said, is 69 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah. So, and even despite that, from what I've noticed from my conversations with fellow EV YouTubers and watching, it still seems like our prices here are fairly moderate compared to the coasts. compared to the Northeast. And so that's a big blessing, I think, for all of us here, that we're still in line with the cost of living that we have here in Arkansas. And so that's a good thing that I've noticed here as well in the interior, is that we're still a little bit on the lower echelon of pricing, and hopefully we can keep it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you on, I understand the reasoning for staying on these alternative fuel corridors, but you, especially saying, since you said you came from East Arkansas, Arkansas has so many of these little population centers that are nowhere near an interstate.
Mm-hmm.
You go to places like Hot Springs, Jonesboro, which I guess Jonesboro technically has an interstate, but
El Dorado.
Triple nickel.
Right. But you have like El Dorado, Monticello, you have Pine Bluff, which is technically on 530, but it's the very end of 530.
Mm-hmm.
You have these population centers that are currently not served by anything because they're not on an interstate. And now Hot Springs has some DC fast charge infrastructure. Our good friend JT does Franklin's Charging. He has a location down there, of 2 62.5 kilowatt hour or kilowatt stations, 125 pair, whatever. And then you have some car dealerships, but that's it for the town of Hot Springs, which is a big tourist destination. And,
right.
It's Arkansas. The interstate covers a big chunk of the state. It covers Little Rock. It covers Northwest Arkansas, which is where most people do live. But there's we sprawl so far out, and then you just have these big pockets. It's an area where I feel like, and we've had this discussion too, talking to, Joel and I've been lucky enough to talk to Arkansas Democrat Gazette twice now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of come up both times, is like, you can get pretty much anywhere in Arkansas if you're on the interstate, but it's when you get off the interstate that you start to kind of having to question, like, if you want to go to Eureka Springs, or if you want to go to Lake Village, or you want to go to just, other places that are fairly common destinations for people that live here.
Right.
It gets a little questionable.
Mountain Home,
Yep.
Mountain Home.
And
you can go to Mountain Home and charge at the GMC dealership and pay like $1.75 a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
If you want to do that.
Great. We'll get a reverse mortgage while we're up there too.
One of the most popular corridors is Little Rock to Branson. Still, no charging along there. So,
right.
Yeah. So that kind of gets us into our next question, is kind of do you see as some of those challenges when building out EV charging infrastructure to those rural, less populated areas? I mean, I understand, the companies are like, we don't want to put a fast charger there because it's not popular. I'm not going to put a fast charger in a town with 10,000 people. But then drivers look at it as, well, we have to go through that town to get to New Orleans or other places, or Mountain Home, or, southeastern Missouri. So what do you think, what are some of the biggest challenges do you think in building that out in those less populated areas, which we have a lot of here in Arkansas?
Well, I think the reality is Arkansas's access to power and the grid in some ways it seems fairly disjointed in a way. We have a lot of electrical cooperatives that I understand are all getting their energy from the same place with Entergy. But, with each place, you get your own policy on demand charges, or what does the grid need. And so I think that the power grid's ability to sustain that kind of electrical demand, even where the infrastructure may already be, I feel like it may be maxed out in these areas already. We're just trying to serve our customers, never mind, motorists. Or it could be fragile. Growing up in Crittenden County, if somebody sneezed for a while, it seemed like the power went out.
Hard wind, big rain.
It was just like, thank goodness for MLG&W in Memphis, like at least that was even worse, but they fixed a lot of that. So it seems like a lot of these places, even ones that are getting on board with DC fast charging, there's still so many caveats to their ability to charge. Last weekend I was in Chakota, Oklahoma, and that thing was limited to 250 amps. And then when 1030 came around, it went up to 500. So it seems like in the morning that, a cold morning, there was still snow on the ground and everything from that last snowstorm. I get why they're doing it, but that tells me something about their grid also, right? one of my friends, you may know him, Walter from the Network Architect channel. He took a EV road trip from North Carolina to the Grand Canyon, stopping at Pilot Flying J's because he had a Cadillac Lyriq and free charging. He stopped at the West Memphis location, and that thing was stuck at 65 kilowatts for the duration of his charge. Early morning and cold. So obviously that, and it was in Christmas break. So, West Memphis School District, Marion School District, they're all out of school. So everybody's at home trying to stay warm. So that area, being my stopping grounds, I understand why that happened there. It's just, it seems like some of these things are fragile still. Like there needs to be some modernization to what can support these DC fast chargers before they can install them reliably. I say, and I think you touched on it, rural areas just have a lower demand for this as well. And so couple that with a higher cost to get the goods and talent there to build it, I think that creates a little bit of a chicken egg argument for EV adoption as well. So I think that's a big issue. And then finally, upkeep seems to be an issue in rural area. The areas that actually have them, it's the same thing in that, like, we have to get the people out there. We have to get the tools and the equipment all the way out to these rural areas, away from where we have our metropolitan storehouses or whatever. And that takes time and that takes money. Now, admittedly, I think one of the goals that NEVI had was to help with that, to help alleviate that. There were requirements, obviously, for uptime, and even a better definition of uptime with NEVI. So I think the most recent report that I saw was that last month, NEVI, their sites had a 97% availability at their charging stalls. And according to Perrin, if you're familiar with that platform, that's about 10 points higher than non-NEVI sites. So NEVI was going to be a very good answer, I thought. It had the ability and it had the provision to not only build these DC fast chargers in rural areas that otherwise wouldn't get them, but also to maintain them, which that's going to be a staple for rural areas with U.S. highways or state highways moving forward.
Yeah, totally agree. So you've mentioned NEVI multiple times in that, and this is a good transition. So what role do you see states and local governments playing in helping or hindering the expansion of charging infrastructure?
Well, the funny thing is, that's not a problem unfamiliar to local jurisdictions, state jurisdictions. Adding infrastructure, adding commerce, that's not unfamiliar to them. Things that they do for other entities, they could do for them. If they have the interest, if they have the desire. That, I think that's the main hindrance, is where's the desire here. But also, like, if you're interested as a local government, that permitting process has got to be simpler. There's got to be a better way. I watched Out of Spec Kyle Connor. They installed their own DC fast charger, and months upon months upon months of permitting in Colorado, right? Like, that's supposed to be an EV haven, So that's a problem, I think, is permitting, and some of that may just be they're not familiar with how this operates yet. It may be that the talent they have is not interested in facilitating that. So I think that they can help by clearing up their permitting process, maybe using tax incentives or even advertising incentives through their chambers of commerce and things like that. In Marion, in East Arkansas, where I'm from, the Chamber of Commerce once had a billboard that said, like, rest, refuel, recharge. But the recharge was obviously staying at a hotel for you. Mm-hmm. Why can't that be for an EV as well? Mm-hmm. Right? You could advertise, hey, this is a place for EVs. We know that so far, it seems like in 2025, like 1 out of every 4 or 1 out of every 5 car sales is an EV so far this year. That's 20 to 25% of people who are going to see your billboard. So I think that there are some ways that local municipalities and government entities can certainly help, and it's not unfamiliar to them how to do it. It's just they have, there has to be a convincing that I think this is a worthy cause for their effort. Some hindrances, like we mentioned, the permitting process, apathy. I think, it's kind of like they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then, then they fight you, then you win, right? Whatever that, that's from crypto, I think, at some point. But I think that's kind of a bit of a phase that EV adoption's going through. And it seems like now we're getting to that, then they fight you part. It seems like that's what we're kind of teetering towards right now, which means we're only one step closer to then you win, So that's a good thing that this process just keeps rolling. So eventually, I think the hindrances will be addressed. There's too many people driving them.
Gotcha. So one of the things that I follow on your channel, what you're doing is you've mentioned before, kind of looking at some of these DC fast chargers, but you've kind of paid particular attention to, because I guess it's your neck of the woods, what Walmart is doing. So for a while there, Walmart just let, Electrify America just pop up DC fast chargers in their own, parking lots. Walmart has now kind of taken the initiative to build out their own, kind of DC fast charger network. That site's been up, not Pilot J, but that one site that they piloted up in, I believe, Springdale has been online for about a year or two now. So what are some of the things that you've been following with Walmart? How's that charging experience been like on that network?
Yeah, sure. So I got involved on YouTube basically because a lot of people are starting to track these things. Like the advertising dollars, I guess they're just not there yet for CPOs. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to me is like a lot of us kind of take that on ourselves, and we probably do a better job because we're so thorough and we're so enthusiastic about this. And so I have a media background over in East Arkansas, and up here I haven't gotten to use it until this year with Springdale. But I kind of wanted something on my own. So I was like, oh, maybe Walmart. I'm close. I got proximity. I might be able to find some things out that, other people far away can't. And so I got on board originally creating the Arkansas eTraveler for that. And then, ventured out into some other things for the sake of the region and the state of Arkansas. So, yeah, Walmart, obviously, a lot of people, most of us are familiar with their partnership with Electrify America. And I think that at the beginning, Walmart just kind of was like, well, that might get some traffic to our stores. We might get some money from, rent on our property or whatever. I don't think it was a big deal to them. But once adoption really started taking off and getting out of that early adoption phase, they went, oh, we may have something here. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of companies do this. They'll let somebody else kind of test out the first round and then learn from those mistakes from the other company. Disney does this all the time. Disney Plus did it with Netflix. I think Walmart kind of did that with Electrify America, learning from their mistakes. And I think that a lot of people will tell you that there are plenty of those with Electrify America, which makes sense when you're born out of a settlement. Mm-hmm. But obviously, they're kind of turning their tides as well. I'm not one to bash Electrify America. I'm just one to say we have a lot to learn from them. And I think Walmart is doing that. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that Walmart wants to necessarily join the EV market. I think they want to lead it. I think that they want to be the face of EV charging because, and I took some notes on this earlier just to make sure that I had numbers and everything correctly. They plan to install DC fast chargers at thousands of stores from coast to coast, and they have cited that 90% of the U.S. population is within 10 miles of a Walmart, supercenter or neighborhood market, or if you have one of the few Division 1 stores left, or Sam's Club. And so with 90% of the U.S. population within a 10-mile radius of that, that's kind of easy for an EV person to account for. 10 miles is doable to plan for as like the equivalent of a low fuel light, right? So I think that they realize they can make a difference there. I don't think that they're trying to replace also their partnership with Electrify America. I think that they are going to let it exist. I kind of want to say they want to complement it, but they obviously want to surpass it. But I think that Electrify America will be a part of that 90% goal. EV charging for them, it likely serves as a high tide to lift a lot of ships for Walmart. But there was an article released in the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette that quoted their leader on this project as saying that they see it as a standalone profitable business, that we're not here as, drawing you in, go buy a candy bar or whatever, or do your groceries while you're charging. No, the charging is what the charging is. But if you need groceries, they're right there, So I think that that's a pretty cool part of Walmart's investment in this, is realizing this is its own thing. This is something that we can appreciate for what it is. We don't have to add anything else to it, and it will make people happy if we do it the right way. And so that's going to be a big tide for them, because also charge while you shop, I think that they could view that as a way to incentivize people to return to their stores that have gone to internet only. They could potentially take some market share from Amazon and from others who are getting people who just want to stay home to shop. Well, now they have a reason to go to the store. They could get competitively priced electrons, basically. So that's a big part of what they're doing. And obviously, to complement that, I think that they're going to be kind of doing their gasoline model. Anytime you go to an exit or go into town with a Murphy Express or a Walmart gas station, they're typically the cheapest there. And it may be as few as 10 cents. It may be as much as 15. But I think that will happen with DC fast charging for them as well. And then if you have Walmart Plus, you'll probably be able to get another, dime or so off, just like you do with gas. So that's a big part of their plan. Their progress. You mentioned the beta testing locations. This all started at a corporate office in Bentonville. It was a charge point Express 250 that capable of 62.5 watts, and if you had kilowatts, and if you had the Walmart Enterprise app for being an associate, they would let you charge there while you were at work. I've driven by it a couple times. There's always a Bolt there, So it seems like it was pretty popular. They expanded to having ChargePoint Express Plus units in Springdale and in Crossroads, Texas. The Springdale location remains free, which is how I right now manage to have free mode of transportation right now, like I mentioned earlier, because I go there on the way to work or on the way home from work, and if I have to pick something up, well, that's great too. The location in Crossroads, Texas, which is in the northern part of the Metroplex, that's where they're kind of testing their payment method integrated with the Walmart app. It's not Walmart Pay yet, but right now it's 35 cents per kilowatt hour there, and it's been that way since mid-October. So pretty good consistency there. In the fall, or excuse me, I think it was in August, we saw an article come out of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram saying that 15 locations were going to open up in the Metroplex by spring, with construction supposedly starting last October. That did not happen. But part of what I do on my YouTube channel is documenting that progress, and significant progress has been made since the turn of the calendar to 2025. Of those 15 locations, right now we have 8 that are spotted under construction and 7 remain in planning as of March 3rd. There's been some other developments there. They're no longer using ChargePoint Express Plus units. They have swapped to Alpitronic hyperchargers, and that is a significant move.
That's a smart move. That's a smart move. Yep.
Yeah, it's very significant for a couple of reasons, even more now that we've seen in the past couple of weeks. But obviously, if you're going to build, as they want to, a network that's going to drive competition potentially to the point of competing and surpassing the Tesla supercharger network, having their silicon carbide rectifier technology to minimize loss of transfer energy during the charging process, that's going to save them money. We know from their stomping grounds in Europe that these are extremely reliable. Not having to do maintenance consistently is going to save them a ton of money. And now we're kind of cluing in on ChargePoint's financial woes, their problems with Wall Street. So there's some shaky ground there that I think Walmart was not particularly interested in venturing on with this nationwide effort. And it seems as though, because I went to the Metroplex last weekend to see the Razorbacks play in the baseball tournament down there at Globe Life Field, I visited a few of the locations that are just waiting on a meter. Sorry, they're just waiting on a meter, and it seems to me like they are actually each location is kind of getting its own design, and it's not a cookie cutter Nevi type thing. It is the location in Plano, Texas, is getting 6 Alpitronic hyperchargers with 2, possibly 4 handles per unit. Murphy, Texas is a more suburban area. It's not near a U.S. highway or interstate, so it's got 4 Alpitronic hyperchargers with just 2 handles, 1 for NACS, 1 for CCS. But if you go to McKinney, Texas, closer to Oklahoma on US 75, they all have 4 handles on 1 unit. So we're seeing some adaptations from place to place. They're placing a huge emphasis on hyper local market strategies, and I think that that's a great move on their end. So the prospects of this are also very, very huge. They have the resources to do this in a scale and time frame that we have yet to see in the world of EV adoption. So it's very exciting. I love getting to track it, and it's just phenomenal to be a part of this at this point in history.
And the one thing Walmart has going for them, it's not like these companies that came up like FreeWire and stuff. Walmart already has the money. It's not like they need to go out and raise funds to build out their DC fast charging network. I mean, they're already flush with funds to be able to do this with on the road. Don't have to rely on government incentives. I mean, that helps, but they don't have to rely on that to do this. They have the funds to do it themselves.
Right. If they had funded or applied for funding from Nevi, they would have seen it as nothing more than a roadblock.
Yep.
They could have powered straight through it.
Yep.
And not batted an eye. So you're absolutely right. The capital's there. The creed within their charter to be sustainable with their energy by 2040. This is a big part of that. And not even mentioning this, you've got Walmart in-home up here. They're using bright drop vans. Every Walmart I went to check on these chargers, I went around back to see, did they have a bright drop and did they have EV charging infrastructure? And yes. And in Northwest Arkansas, even the Store 100 in Bentonville, they have DC fast chargers from ChargePoint just for the bright drop vans and just for the e-transit vans that are bringing groceries to people's homes. So there's even more layers to this for Walmart than just a customer facing charging experience.
Yeah, totally agree.
One place too, we see some of these CPOs struggle with, it seems to be just like software and user experience. And I've used the ones in Springdale a handful of times, 2 or 3 times maybe. And like you mentioned, those are still currently free. So I didn't get to do anything payment side. But I remember being impressed at how well the integration worked, like between just activating the charger, monitoring it in the Walmart app. Right. If I remember correctly, the first or second time I did it, I didn't even tell it what plug I was at.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You scan a QR and that information's in the QR. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just tells you to plug in and then boom, you're done. Because those have 2 handles on each unit technically. So it's like, it doesn't know what cord I'm at or it just worked. There's no, and I remember being impressed too, because it's not like it's Walmart hardware. They're using third-party ChargePoint hardware at that site. And it's getting all the information it needs and putting it neatly, cleanly in the Walmart app. And I just remember being super impressed at how well that worked. And that's because they're Walmart.
Right. Well, you can tell that ChargePoint really wanted to work with Walmart on this because of that software integration. They really basically just kind of white labeled their firmware for Walmart's needs. And they've updated it a few times since last July when I started going there. And so it's a good example of a partnership that is really going to be needed as we go through the changing landscape, as charge point providers come and go. It almost screams like and demonstrates the need for OCPP compliance in the United States. So I think that's a big, huge part of Walmart saying, yeah, we need this to be for us, which for them is integrating with their app. Walmart has a live activity. If you have, like iOS 16 or an iPhone 16, got the dynamic island at the top that is always on to show you what's going on and whatever your activity is. It will show you how many kilowatt hours have been dispensed into your vehicle. Nobody else does that, and I don't know why. Like, that almost seems too easy. So good on Walmart for working with ChargePoint to create that. And, obviously, like there's no payment terminals at either ChargePoint beta locations or on the Alpitronics. There's just no terminals because you're going to do it through the app. And Walmart has a fairly ubiquitous app that I think most of us are comfortable with using, and we can use it with charging.
Well, the app is kind of all inclusive. I mean, I can track my groceries, I can track my pickup, I can do my pharmacy stuff. It's just an all inclusive app. And you made the point when I'm thinking about it, because a lot of times when we get our groceries from Walmart, we order them and go pick them up. Well, I'm thinking it takes about 15, sometimes 20 minutes to pick up. If I could just sit at a DC fast charger at a Walmart, waiting for them to bring the groceries out to my car, 15, 20 minutes, I'm in my wife's car, that's a full charge. In my car, that's probably a 60% charge. So, I mean, why not do that? So why not utilize this entire parking lot area you have, take 6 or 8, 10 spots up to put some DC fast chargers in? And because I tell you, every time I stop at a Walmart to fast charge, I go inside. I just, even if it's just to get a candy bar or a drink or to go to the bathroom, we are making a purchase there. So it just makes sense for them to do that.
Yeah. Typically when I'm at that Walmart, either I just got done with a commute or I'm getting ready for one. And so the ability to just grab a quick snack before or after school or use the restroom for the 30-mile journey ahead of me, that's a big plus. And on top of being able to get free juice.
Yep. So before we wrap things up for the day, Landon, tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel, Arkansas eTraveler, how it came about and kind of what your focus is with that channel.
Sure. So yeah, the Arkansas eTraveler came about, like I said, from trying to get on board with being a part of this moment of critical importance in humanity. I think this kind of integration, this transition period from internal combustion to electric vehicles, and it's been so intriguing. Like how many people are 1 foot in both? How many are staying in what we know? How many people are 2 feet in the future? And so what I wanted to do was go with Walmart and make sure that their story is being told as best that I can do it. But also then I kind of realized, well, in Northwest Arkansas, we're just not, we won't stop growing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people coming here from the West Coast and California. And some of that is by Walmart, but they're bringing EVs. The number of Teslas up here is incredible. And now other CCS vehicles are joining the fray as well. And so, like, do these people know where to go charge? Do these people know which ones are good, which ones are not good? Like, I just kind of wanted to give people who were coming here a resource that they could quickly access, maybe learn something, maybe be a little entertained along the way, and just enjoy being in Northwest Arkansas. Because there's no shortage of natural blessings up here from scenery and industry and everything like that. But to make that work for somebody who hasn't been here with an EV, I just kind of wanted to be a part of saying, welcome, here's how you can exist here with your EV and live a prosperous and productive life in this community. And then I kind of grew it a little bit further because Arkansas has always been my home. I love this state so much. I even convinced my wife from Florida to move here, so it's just so important to me that people don't see this as a drive-through state just because we have a coast-to-coast I-40 and a Chicago to New Orleans I-55. So I wanted to give people a reason to stop and to take a breath of fresh air at Hot Springs National Park or Hobbs State Park over in Rogers or wherever. And so, I mean, Wapanaka in Crittenden County. So like, that's what I'm trying to do is paint a picture of how can someone who is already embracing the EV lifestyle marry it to living or visiting the natural state. And so that's where my adventures have taken me. They've taken me to Missouri, obviously, as well, because you got to get here. There's some good things there as well that I've got coming down the pipeline up there.
Cool.
Oklahoma as well, people coming from that direction. And obviously the relationship between the Metroplex and Arkansas cannot be undersold, especially specifically Northwest Arkansas and the Little Rock area, just with the commerce connections and obviously the I-30 connection. So just trying to tell this story as best I can for people visiting or interested in what the natural state has to offer. And I think people as we go are going to be surprised just how much it has to offer, especially down in South Arkansas, once the story of the Smackover formation and everything down there gets told. That's a really interesting piece to me too.
Yes, Des. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up for the night?
No, hey, thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, and I really, really enjoyed getting to have a good conversation with fellow EV enthusiasts in the in the natural state.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I hope to see y'all out there. I've seen your advertising at a few different DC Fast Chargers and such, and it's been such a resource in my journey as well. So, no, Joel, Sebastian, thank you so much for having me. It really was a privilege.
Yeah, we need to make a more sustained effort to get up to the northern part of the state. So that maybe some of our spring or summer travels we'll get up there and do some stuff out there. But we also like to have you back on once these new stations come on in Texas and all. I'd love to have you back on. I'm sure you'll go down and check them out and kind of let us know about them, tell us what they're like.
Absolutely, would be more than happy to.
Awesome. All right, Sebastian, get us out of here.
Well, Landon, thank you again for joining us today. A reminder, you can follow Landon and his EV adventures on his YouTube channel, The Arkansas eTraveler. We put a link in the show notes below. As always, don't forget to subscribe to our channel while you're here and tap that notification icon so you can be alerted when new content is released. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you again on another episode of the EV Geek Podcast. So long, everyone.